Hello you lot, it's Friday 25th of November and welcome to Total Cult Gaming. Now video games are big business with development costs running into the tens of millions for a lot of developers, but many video games wouldn't be the masterpieces they are today without having built on what came before. So today on Total Cult Gaming I want to have a look at just 5 video games from the previous console generations that helped forge the future of gaming. Now these lists, they're never in any particular order, so I want to kick things off with Jade Empire. Now many of you know that BioWare made the Mass Effect trilogy, the Dragon Age saga and the much beloved Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. Now these games all have one thing in common, and that is a strong player-driven narrative, often accompanied by a morality system that allows you to either play the good guy or be an absolute dick. But BioWare had a middle child in the form of 2005's Jade Empire. Set in a fantasy version of China, Jade Empire sees you in the role of a martial arts student in a small village being tutored by Master Li. Now when the village is attacked and Master Li abducted, it's down to you, the player, to find and rescue your kung fu master while picking up various characters along the way. The simple yet effective real-time combat system focused on switching kung fu styles on the fly, utilising ranged magic, bladed weapons and support styles to daze or cripple your opponents. Jade Empire also marked the first time that the LGBT community was truly represented with both gay and lesbian romance options. Now that's something that BioWare were not permitted to do in Knights of the Old Republic. Second in line we've got Alpha Protocol. Now Obsidian usually end up with scraps from the AAA table. BioWare didn't want to make Knights of the Old Republic 2, so LucasArts gave it to Obsidian. Bethesda were working on other projects, so Fallout New Vegas also fell to Obsidian. They even developed the acclaimed South Park The Stick of Truth, so when I tell you their talents at developing RPGs are strong, you know what I'm talking about. Now enter 2010's Alpha Protocol, a brand new IP by Obsidian that took elements of their previous efforts and tried to give us a kind of Mass Effect meets Jason Bourne third-person RPG shooter. Now although the game suffered somewhat from a sluggish shooting mechanic and an everything but the kitchen sink level up system, where Alpha Protocol truly shone was in its presentation. Now you played an established government agent invited to join the titular Alpha Protocol, and your choices and decisions in conversations with the various friendly and not so friendly NPCs made a huge difference to how the story played out. Now although the combat was not the most polished, the sheer amount of options with which you could level your character gave you an enormous scope of different playstyles. The game even had multiple and often drastically different endings depending on your interactions throughout the game, and that's something that even Mass Effect didn't truly deliver on. Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning. Now it's difficult to pin down exactly what went wrong with this game. It had a story by legendary author R.A. Salvatore, it had design work by Todd McFarlane, and it was coupled with game design by some of the people behind Morrowind. Kingdoms of Amalur looks set to take the RPG genre by storm, but with publishing falling to EA, who were not only favouring the publicity of other games, but also placing embargoes on some retailers who hadn't met financial demands, Kingdoms simply got forgotten. At a time when game developers were focused on gritty realism and colour palettes that included varying shades of dirt, Kingdoms delivered a bright and colourful world with more content than I'd seen in any game at the time, and that is no exaggeration. The simple yet complex 2-button combat system was fast and fluid, with a risk-reward finisher that would gain you more XP. The story was absolute nonsense, but no one cared. It was fun, it was huge, and it was varied, and I can't help but think that if it came out on the current console generation with its fixation on making everything look like a Pixar movie, that Kingdoms of Amalur would go down a storm. And speaking of storms, Bulletstorm. Now Bulletstorm was dumb. There's no two ways about it. The main character in this over-the-top sci-fi first-person shooter is a drunk egotistical douche who nearly gets his entire crew killed in the first 5 minutes of the game. A suicidal assault that has your psychic mutilated and turned into a cyborg through this weird medical procedure. He then spends a good portion of the game expressing the desire to kill you should he get the chance. Now this was at a time when the Battlefield and Call of Duty franchises were at their peak, focusing on realistic gunplay and real-world narratives, so Bulletstorm's balls-to-the-wall approach was easily overshadowed, but underneath this ridiculous exterior was an amazing game mechanic that rewarded you for being inventive with your methods of murder. Hoofing an enemy into the air with a well-placed size 12, shooting them in the face, grappling them back and booting them again was actually one of the more boring kills in your arsenal. You only have to look at today's shooters like Doom with its glory kill system and Overwatch with its bright graphics and unique abilities to see that games like Bulletstorm helped set a trend for the more outlandish first-person shooters. And last but not least, Spec Ops: The Line. Now Spec Ops is an amazing piece of cinematic gaming. Based loosely on Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, the same book that Apocalypse Now was based on, Spec Ops sees the player take control of a 3-man Special Forces unit sent into Dubai after a near-apocalyptic sandstorm has decimated the city. Now, although its third-person gunplay and tactical squad orders had been done by other games with more polish, what set Spec Ops apart was the strong story that saw decisions the protagonist was forced to make send him down a rabbit hole of despair and madness. Now, this was not a gung-ho style shooter. You didn't have a main character shouting one-liners draped in the American flag. It was a story about atrocity and the horrors of war. Now, you top that off with some superb voice work, including the talents of Babylon 5's Bruce Boxleitner as Colonel John Conrad, and you have a tale that will leave you mentally exhausted and stay with you for months, if not years after playing. So that's just 5 criminally overlooked titles from the previous console generations that to me were way ahead of the curve in terms of interactive storytelling and gameplay mechanics. Now, do you have any other suggestions that you think should be on that list? Let me know in the comments section below, and as always, game on.